Hey everybody. Good morning. I actually wanted to clarify that I know that it was in the schedule that it would be a talk on local governance, but this is not a specifically a governance talk. This is about sustainable development and impact metrics that have some governance implications. And I do have some background to speak to that, so that's kind of where everything intersects here. I wanted to thank everyone for being here. I wanted to thank everyone for giving their time, their professional talents, their brain share, and their personal passion for being here. And I want to thank the students and the young entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico that are viewing us right now in DC as we go through this. And thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say who I am. My name is David Alvarez Geeter. I'm a child of the diaspora. I was born in New Jersey. I have a big Puerto Rican family. I went out to California to Stanford University to study earth sciences, sustainable development, and entrepreneurship. And I also studied island ecology in Hawaii. So I'm looking to bring a lot of those resources. Okay, thank you. I'm looking to bring a lot of those resources, experience, and skill sets to the island. Our company, Primary Productions, is actually a certified promoter of new business for Puerto Rico. So we have a private sector partnership with the Department of Economic Development and Commerce, and that is the highest ranking department next to the governor's office, and they're the folks that have been providing the tax incentives that most of you guys are familiar with, and I'll speak to some of that as well. Let me just say why I'm here. I said who I am, and I thanked you all, but why I'm here is because I love nature, I love Puerto Rico, and I love science. And when I think about science, when we talk about science, I'm not kind of talking about how the scientific community kind of is defined today or put in a box. I'm talking about science at its core, and as scientists, all we are seekers of the truth. And in our scientific process, it is our job to withhold judgment. It's our job to question, examine everything from all sides, to submit only to the argument and experimentation, and then also to question our own assumptions. So I just kind of want to bring it back to kind of the core tenets of that, of what it means to kind of go through the science process and how we look at the scientific process as a way of understanding sustainability science. There's a lot of talk about how sustainability is kind of perceived as a set standard, if you will, but it's really a strange attractor that we're trying to figure out how to develop towards and more efficiently. So who we are, Primary is our company, Primary Productions. We do human and ecologically centered design, and we do that through the following for Puerto Rico by doing Act 20 and 22 relocation consulting in the sense of bringing equitable and sustainable relocation to the island. Currently the incentives aren't set up that way, but I believe there's a lot of good intentioned people, a lot of folks I met at the crypto events, and folks who've been reaching out to us as well who are interested in the rebuild efforts on the island in addition to relocating their entities. SeedxChange is what I'll talk about as our flagship product today. That's our impact investment tool. And then I'm really excited to have Alicia come up to talk about Design for Puerto Rico, which is kind of the educational capacity building foundation that makes all of this possible. So this is our core team, and we have a network of amazing people who have been working with us, sharing their time part-time, who would love to come on more full-time as we grow and develop. But this is myself, Annalicia, and Erica Costello, who's out in LA at the moment and couldn't be here. So let's talk about Act 20 and 22, right? For better or for worse, right? What's happening there? I know that Tom gave a lot of good feedback as to what might be or might not be possible. And I think some of that applies to residents versus entities. So we have to think about Act 20 as your entity moving to Puerto Rico and the tax exemption laws that are available for your entity, and then as Act 22 as an individual investor, or an individual or an investor. And so there are different versions, there are different tax exemptions for that. It's my opinion that the incentives are much more favorable for an entity as an Act 20 company, and we can talk more about any way that if anyone's interested in that kind of configuration. But we do have byproducts of that. This is an example that was taken in San Juan, which is near Calle Luisa, an area that's being really rapidly developing. It has a lot of restaurants, a lot of tourism activity. But you can see here on the left, this is where this is your typical home and apartment setup. And the one right next to it is one that was an entire building next to it, the same half, purchased to be renovated for Airbnb. In one situation, people live here, and the other ones, people don't. And the revenue models are different for both situations. But that kind of shared economic prosperity is kind of what we need to address when we think about the implications of real estate development coming in with new Act 2022 businesses and what that looks like for people in Puerto Rico. And meanwhile, down the street, this is also still happening, right? So you have buildings in existence, and then you have buildings that need to be rebuilt or just rethought of. So it's no wonder why there are sentiments, right? There are this Yankee go home, right? There's there's a history, but then there's also a rule system that's not really allowing for that shared prosperity model to come together. And that's why we want to be there to leverage our position to walk this road together. Take this, we have this whole process of folks that are coming to the island, that are reinvesting in the island, the startup society's doctrine, if you will, or just the manifesto about how we can create really rapidly prosperity cities in a short period of time, is a co-design challenge, and it is a cultural translations challenge as well too. But in a design process that brings everyone together, that's really the kind of process that we need in order to make this happen in a timeline that Puerto Rico needs, and from the decentralized community standpoint, the timeline that community needs too, to prove something, to get something out there that is fully operating on its own. And one of the things I think about is how might we design a protocol for special economic zones that actually enhances the natural world around it? Because when we're talking about building startup cities, from an environmentalist perspective, I'm like, oh, okay, great, more concrete, and just more of the inefficiencies that come with cities, and this is kind of reflective of the way that we communicate with nature, right? It's like on the left, this is like New York and Central Park, or this is where we're here and nature is over there, capital N nature. And then on the right, this is what nature is telling us that she wants, right? So it's like, no, if you go away for a while, it's all integrated at the same time. So if we think about that, what's the fusion of those two? We get to like models. I love this French architect who like really brings together this idea of biodesign, biomimicry, learning from nature, returning to nature to solve our problems. Because nature is has solved a lot of the biggest problems from a collaboration standpoint, a resource efficiency standpoint, a waste elimination standpoint, and an energy efficiency standpoint. So we have a lot to learn from nature for applications both on land and the sea. And we can learn from its designs and create actually more beautiful buildings, right? So there's an understanding of the impact that we're making and that we can measure, but then also we can utilize what we understand from nature's natural shapes and organic textures to build better buildings and build healthier cities. One of our advisors from the Natural Capital Project, a professor of mine, she's been studying, working with her group about how when you introduce organic shapes and textures into a city, you improve cognitive health. Because biophilia means that we have a neurological affinity to be closer to nature. Right? It's when you think about it, of course, that makes a lot of sense. But no straight lines exist in nature as well too. So there's a lot of learning we have to do to realign the way that we develop. This is me and Gustavo Diaz, who I wish was here. We were walking in Puerto Rico in Orocovis just before the Foundation for Puerto Rico came and started their island relief initiatives, and we were just a conversation about how do we actually create systems of accountability to create these shared prosperity models, or how do we close, what I've been thinking about a lot is how we close the climate investment gap and be able to provide that early stage tool that allows impact investors to say, okay, I know the kind of environmental return I'm going to get from this project, but then also, how do we make that equitable for people living in Puerto Rico and the folks that are coming? And this is why we're creating SeedxChange. And SeedxChange is that impact investment vehicle and also the cryptocurrency that is reflective of the value that's being generated by sustainable projects that we will measure and understand during the life cycle of these projects. And so I'll kind of briefly go over this. We can talk about some of the details more, but the opportunities that we see, impact investment markets are over a $500 billion market since 2009. It's been steadily growing. And those impact investors want to know, in an earliest stage if possible, what's my environmental and social outcomes. Now, social impact is not something I'm going to touch about. This is only about ecological, measurable data that we can, which has inherent social benefit. But impact assessment from a social side is tricky. And I respect everybody in the space, including Alicia, for doing that. Okay, good timing. But remote sensing and 3D capture, I was a design consultant at Autodesk. I worked with some of the first laser scanners and HDR scanners to actually bring more high-resolution data about what's happening in the natural environment. And a lot of the professors I'd worked with were traditional field scientists that would have to go out and measure trees and extrapolate what the biodiversity is going to be in that area. Now with a combination of remote sensing and 3D scanning from drones and even just on the land, we can improve the resolution in which we're understanding what's happening. We can do that more real time. Machine learning as a way to take that data and create more predictive outcomes about how changes in the environment will lead to certain levels of impact gains from an ecosystem services perspective. Crowdsourcing not only the resources to actually get these projects funded, these pilot projects funded, but also the expertise to validate the data that we are collecting or we are projecting at an early stage. And then, of course, everyone's kind of familiar with kind of the digital exchange of currency and the way that we decentralize the way our information is stored. This is an example, real quick, I'll show of like, oh wow, it's way more. It looks less grainy, but this is a high-resolution scan of an oak tree that shows you exactly the kind of resolution that we can get out in the natural environment for studying, let's say, an agroforestry project or the way that a rehabilitation effort is going, or if we just wanted to turn that tree into an amazing building. All that data is usable within the way that we can capture. Okay, and I'll move a little forward. And the solutions in terms of, we look at startup as an experiment in sustainable design, where you have your observations, hypothesis, and eventually your outcomes that you're studying to improve the science of sustainability, so that every project that goes along in this platform is helping to push the science forward. Tokenizing the way that value is generated from an ecological standpoint in a holistic model that's more of like an index. We call that the seed, or seed coin. I kind of like just seed because it's not, it's kind of a deeper metaphor than the coin, in my opinion. Storing that information in a decentralized way. And we have been, I think the most interesting part that I'll talk to you now is about the diaspora-based membership investment vehicle. And so we really try to optimize, like through our approach, the sustainable capital deployment, building human capital development, and then obviously translating our information to what the economic resilience is going to be for Puerto Rico. And to give you a sense about what the potential of our diaspora, it's growing from 5.4 to projected to be close to 6 million people in the US and some in the UK. And a declining population in Puerto Rico, about 3 million, 3.5 to 3 million. At a membership model of the diaspora, the earliest adopters who want to see Puerto Rico be better immediately, at a very small monthly membership, we can generate millions of dollars of capital to be anchoring capital and development projects that we can work with and scale with other financial resources. And that's how we're starting. So we'll be out at Restart Week West in Puerto Rico to talk to potential folks who are interested in relocating to Puerto Rico, and also to plug into the amazing scene of university students who are actually bootstrapping themselves to be able to handle this wave and this next level of technology. We have a presence at the National Puerto Rican Day Parade coming up in June 10th in New York City, where we'll be launching this diaspora-based membership model to get the private equity started for these projects. And we have a few pilots we have partnerships that are aligned for a few projects, including one of which I'm really excited to get out in the future, called Science City. And I know that the folks from the PR Science Research Tech Trust, not all of them are here today. But Science City is an amazing opportunity. It's greenfield space, former penitentiary, that could actually turn into a vibrant urban R&D district right in the heart of Rio Piedras. So I'm really excited to utilize the work and efforts and resources that we have to amplify that as a really great first example. And I am going to stop because someone more cool and important is going to come and tell you a little bit about the initiative, about how all this is fundamentally based, and that is building capacity for design thinking in Puerto Rico to handle any kind of technological or sustainable design challenge. So here's Emily's here.
Great, everyone give him a hand. That was a lot of content, right, to get in within that time, but the most important about what David said was going back to nature to solve some of our current problems. There's another critical portion, it's the human factor, right? David cares, and this is why our partnership works really well. He cares so much about science, and I care so much about people. My background comes mainly from that. I study strategic design thinking, and since I don't have too much time, I want to make sure that you guys understand, before you build infrastructure, before you solve these these amazing opportunities. I heard a lot of great solutions. We need to bring it back to the why. We need to make sure that if we want to deploy some of this infrastructure in about 6 months' time to boost the economy, that we have the right people to do it, and not only the right people, but the indigenous. So Design for Puerto Rico is where I've taken a pilot program and really figured out how can we create a closed loop process for entrepreneurship within Puerto Rico by helping them stimulate their own economy, right? How might the individuals that live there really actually take hold of the opportunities to bring in a visitor's economy, to actually join in this effort, to build a workforce that everyone is most speaking about when we think about the infrastructure development? Do they want to be a part of it? So D4PR, we had a pilot in San Juan just last week or so, or 2 weeks ago, and what we wanted to do is see if design can be taught, right? So I got to eat my own dog food in a way, right? I got to make sure that the education model that I'm suggesting and really looking to build with David and all of our partners is can we teach people in a way to define a problem quickly, right? To slow down and synthesize and prioritize those problems, and then identify the key stakeholders involved and identify the first step to go forward with that. And what that looks like, some of the outputs of that, we have Gustavo right here. He's one of the entrepreneurs that we're trying to build just like, is going back to the island and actually solving the problems in his neighborhood. Whether that's creating a hustle house, whether that's creating more real estate opportunities, whether that is being to the right is Lily. So she's looking to actually build out the fact that she wants to do wedding opportunities and building wedding invitations. And what does that look like for the island? So design thinking really actually hits at the core of the why. It makes sure that we bring the people and the social need into the process. We could give them the tools, and what we're looking to build as our pilot and moving forward is more educational workshops, going to students, then going to entrepreneurs, as well as going to the company. So if we're looking at people that are already coming to the island to actually build, how can we join you to really ask the people in the communities that you're going to be impacting, what's their stake? How might they help? And how might they join the rebuild and reimagine the future? So I'd like to thank you guys for today, and I'd like to thank you guys for spending the time really looking through these issues with us. We're going to be available really to help talk and open the conversation about mapping together a future that's not just in disparate problems, but Naomi Klein said it best, a solution that is all connected, right? If we all do our individual efforts alone, I think we will boil the ocean, but together and having a vision we're all working towards is going to be something really opportunistic.